Hello, Scooby Doo fans! Welcome to my Season 1 Episode 4 review of the new Scooby Doo movies. So last time I continued my playthrough of the 2018 Spider-Man video game with Part 10 of my Let's Play. There wasn't really much reception on it. I saw there was like a small amount of people who enjoyed it, but regardless, I hope you guys still enjoyed it for the small amount. Maybe it'll grow after this video, I'm not sure. But thank you to anybody who watched that video, and thank you to all the people who supported me on my last new Scooby Doo Movies review. I really appreciate it. But of course, today I'll be covering Season 1, Episode 4 of the new Scooby Doo Movies, titled The Frickin' Fracas, which was released on September 30th, 1972. The short synopsis of the episode is, when the gang volunteer to drive Jonathan Winters to his friend Maude Frickard's farmhouse, they run into two shady people skulking around and a living scarecrow. It appears that Maude's secret formula, which turns a rooster into a giant, is the cause of the brouhaha. So as always, I will of course be watching this episode on the new Scooby Doo Movies, the Almost Complete Collection. It has basically every episode of the new Scooby Doo Movies, minus one, which is the last episode, the Addams Family episode. So you will unfortunately will not. Unfortunately, that's the only episode that's not on the DVD. But otherwise, you can watch every other episode, and it has a bunch of good special features, so I highly recommend the DVD. But yes, if the short synopsis didn't give it away, today's guest star is, of course, Jonathan Winters. Now, who is Jonathan Winters? Well, we'll dive into that first, but I just want to mention that Jonathan Winters is our first celebrity guest star, as the other three were more fictional. Yes, the Three Stooges were a real comedy troupe, but they were not a singular celebrity. You know, the Three Stooges were a comedy group, kind of an act. Batman and Robin are fictional superheroes, and the Addams Family is a fictional horror family. Jonathan Winters marks our first solo celebrity guest star, and kind of dates the show, because if you're my age or younger, or weren't around in the 70s, you probably have no clue who Jonathan Winters is. There are probably a small portion of you who probably do know who Jonathan Winters is if you're part of my older audience that was around in the 70s and in the beginning of Scooby-Doo's lifespan. But for those who don't, here's just a quick rundown of who Jonathan Winters was. So Jonathan Winters was an American comedian as well as a TV, movie, stage, and voice actor, and he was born on November 11th, 1925 in Dayton, Ohio. In 1960, he would begin recording many comedy albums for the Verve Records label up until his death. He was a pioneer of improvisational comedy, and he was known for his mimicry and impressions. He would usually perform a wide range of characters such as hillbillies, arrogant city slickers, nerve-shattered air pilots, disgruntled Westerners, judgmental Martians, little old ladies, nosy gas station attendants, a hungry cat eyeing a mouse, and the oldest living airline stewardess. However, two of his most memorable characters that he performed were the cranky granny, Maude Frickard, who also makes an appearance in this episode, and you could also consider technically a guest star in this episode, as not only does he voice himself in this episode, but he also voices his character of Maude Frickard. And another one of his memorable characters was bumpkin farmer Elwood P. Suggins. So that's a breakdown of his comedy style and where his comedy, would be produced and where it came from. But what about his roles? What are some of his most memorable roles? Well, you might recognize him in memorable roles such as It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, The Loved One, an episode of The Twilight Zone called A Game of Pool, an episode of The Muppet Show, and The Smurfs, where he voices Grandpa and Papa Smurf. He voiced Grandpa Smurf at one time in the 80s, and he also voiced Papa Smurf in the two live-action movies in the early 2010s. At the time of this episode, Jonathan Winters actually began his own syndicated TV show called The Wacky World of Jonathan Winters, which lasted 2 seasons with a total of 27 episodes from 1972 to 1974. So this episode might have just been a way of kind of promoting his start to his new show. But this wasn't a new thing. Jonathan Winters has made a couple shows and specials based on himself, so this wasn't exactly a new thing. This was just his latest thing at the time, and he probably used this as an outlet to promote himself, maybe not just to adults, but maybe to kids who were watching Scooby Doo. From what I can gather, IMDb describes the show as improvised sketches by Jonathan Winters with guests augmenting the show. I saw a couple of other stuff where it's simply, just called a variety show, so I'm guessing like he would interview guests and maybe do like comedy skits with guests if he was familiar with them or they were comedians like him, and he would have musical performers. Shit like that. Sadly, at the time of recording this, Jonathan Winters has since passed away. He passed away on April 11th, 2013, with his final role being in the live-action sequel to the Smurfs movie, The Smurfs 2. So what's my experience with Jonathan Winters? Personally, this is the first guest star that I am not familiar with at all. Jonathan Winters, compared to the Addams Family and Batman and Robin and the Three Stooges, Jonathan Winters I have no connection with. He is a new person to me. I don't really have any experience with the guy. He very much was more of a product of the 70s because the only exposure I had to him was when he voiced Papa Smurf in the 2 live action movies. And I think he took that over after Don Messick died, who was the original voice of Papa Smurf, I believe, in the original Smurf show. But I remember going to see the live-action Smurf movies in the early 2010s. I didn't know that Jonathan Winters voiced them. Obviously, he was voicing it. So that's really my only exposure to him. I don't have any sort of, connection with his comedy. I'm not familiar with it. I don't know anything about his movie roles. I'm sure many people probably are familiar with his Twilight Zone episode. Twilight Zone is a famous show, and, I've seen the most famous episode, on the airplane, but obviously I haven't seen his episode, so I'm not really familiar with that, or the Muppet Show. So to me, Jonathan Winters is our first guest star that I personally just have no connection with. I don't know the guy at all. I'm not really a fan of his. But I just want to ask you guys, comment down below, what's your experience with Jonathan Winters? What do you think of him as a guest star? Do you think this is a good fit? Do you have any stories you'd like to share? Do you know any of his roles? Are you a fan of his comedy? Is this something you're big on? Or are you not really familiar with Jonathan Winters? Also, comment down below if you want more Season 1 reviews of the new Scooby Doo movies going into May. This is your last chance to do so that I know. So if you want more Season 1 episode reviews going into May, comment down below and let me know, and I will continue to do so. Now, with all that in mind, I believe most fans consider this episode to be one of the worst episodes, if not the worst episode, of the new Scooby Doo movies. Hard to believe, right? That this episode is the poster child to people who say why they don't like the new Scooby Doo movies. They will say, whenever you hear people be critical about the new Scooby Doo movies, they always inevitably bring up this episode. This episode is the poster child of what people are like, see, this is bad. This is what the new Scooby Doo movies is like. Which is unfair, because one episode should not dictate the quality of an entire show. But they use that as an example of, I guess the new Scooby Doo movies at its worst. And a lot of fans, like I said, they believe this is the worst episode of the show. Some people just consider it one of the worst episodes of the show. But do I believe this? Is this really as bad as people make it out to be? Is this truly the worst episode of the show? Is this going to be a really bad episode of the new Scooby Doo movies? Well, let's find out, shall we? So let's take a look at the episode to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of the new Scooby Doo movies. The episode begins with the gang driving through the countryside, where they start to run low on some gas. So they stop off at a gas station. There they meet the famous Jonathan Winters. However, Jonathan Winters is dressed up as a gas station attendant, which is a nice callback to, I guess, one of his characters that I mentioned in the intro, the nosy gas station attendant. And they all don't notice until Velma eventually points out that's Jonathan Winters. He eventually reveals himself, and the gang asks him what he's doing all the way out here. And Jonathan Winters said he was on his way to Maude Frickard's farmhouse, but his car had a little bit of trouble, and he was trying to get it fixed. But they said one of the gas station attendants, I guess, told him that one of the parts that he needs for his car is going to take 6 hours. So he doesn't really have a ride there, or he's going to be out, or he's going to be late to his, his friend Maud Frickard's, dinner. The gang offer him a lift to Maud Frickard's farmhouse, and he accepts, telling them that and he even invites them that they can come to Maud Frickard's farm to, have some dinner, meet the real Maud Frickard, and they can help her around the farm and be farmhands. Some of the gang are pretty excited about the prospect of being, farmhands, especially Velma. But Shaggy, on the other hand, even Scooby is not that excited. And I don't blame him. Velma's like, wouldn't it be nice to pitch some hay, Shaggy, and feed the chickens and the horses? And Shaggy's like, yeah, but I didn't really bring my worker's permit. So I'm just like, yeah, I totally get you, Shaggy. Like, I wouldn't be this excited over working at a farmhouse. I don't know what makes Velma so excited about it, but I would not be that enthusiastic. I'd just be like, where is the food? Daphne notes what a nice change it'll be, going from the usual haunted houses, gloomy mansions, and spooky characters they've been running into lately to going to a farm. Of course, nobody notices that a strange scarecrow is watching them drive by. When they arrive on the farm, they witness two men on a motorcycle being chased off by Maud's handyman, Vernon Crow. As Jonathan and the gang are about to go inside and meet Maud Frickard, Vernon mistakes the gang for trespassers and tells them to get lost. However, Jonathan comes up with the great idea of giving his impression of Maud Frickard to fool him into letting them into the house, and it eventually does work, as he's stupid to believe it. Maud tells them about a secret chicken feed formula hidden on the farm that could make chickens giant, and it explains that the two men from earlier in Vernon's initial attempt to send the gang away, apparently that's all because people have been trying to steal the formula. She doesn't even know where the formula is. If she knew where she was, she would, make her own chicken, restaurant, to make money. And I don't blame her. I mean, that sounds like a moneymaker. Maud's banker, Simon Shaky, visits the house to discuss the bank loan, but the discussion turns sour as she shows him to the door when, they realize that the bank isn't going to loan money to her to start her chicken restaurant, which I guess is called Grandma Frickard's Fried Fracassees. The gang even have a hard time pronouncing it, and Jonathan at one point, corrects the banker, and he says it in Maud's voice, which confuses me, because I'm like, is he trying to be funny there, or did he just accidentally... Was that supposed to be Maud Frickard's line? Did he forget whose voice he was supposed to say that line in? I didn't get it. But they all can't, decide the name of it, so... Jonathan, feeling bad for Maud, offers to give her the money needed to start her chicken restaurants, but she declines, saying that while she certainly appreciates the offer, she explains to Jonathan that she'd rather come up with the money on her own, which isn't nice of Jonathan to do, actually. Maud even accepts the gang as extra help, as she says that she has been too busy lately to help Vernon with the chores, so she sends Vernon to go, show the gang what their chores will be when they wake up at 4 a.m., which is fucking early. And Shaggy at one point even points that out, but he says it weird. He's like, hey, Scoob, did he say 4 a.m.? What do you mean he, Shaggy? I think you mean she, because that was Maud Frickard who said it, not Vernon, not Jonathan. That was Maud Frickard who said it. So that might have been a slip-up, but that was weird. But yeah, 4 a.m., that's fucking early. I don't blame Shaggy. Shaggy didn't even want to do this in the first place, and now he's got to wake up at 4 a.m. to do these chores. Oh, man, I feel so bad for him. However, just as they're going outside to show them the chore, Vernon's going outside to show the chores to the gang, the two suspicious men show up again, and when spotted, they flee in different directions, and everyone splits up to chase them. So, what happens is Vernon, Jonathan, Shaggy, and Scooby all go down to the creek to find the red-haired one, while Fred, Daphne, Velma, and Maud Frickard search the wheat field for the brown-haired one. Shaggy, Scooby, and Jonathan arrive at the mill where they think the red-haired man is hiding, and I actually love the scene where they arrive at the mill and they get a bit cowardly because they think he might be in the bushes. This is a good showcase of why Jonathan Winters works well with Shaggy and Scooby and plays off them well. I'll get that to more of that in the outro, but this scene really does show why Jonathan Winters works well with Shaggy and Scooby in this episode.
What's that?
The mill, where they grind flour.
Wow, like it's dark and spooky down there.
Yeah, here's what we'll do. You two... Whoa, whoa.
What was that?
Somebody's around here. Wish we weren't.
Gotcha. Oh, it's you.
Did you find the guy with the beard?
No. Rats. I've been whacking those bushes trying to flush them out. Of course, he could be hiding down there in the old mill. One of us should go down there. You fellas want to whack bushes?
Zoinks! Like it's pretty dark out there.
I tell you, Vernon, we're not very good bushwhackers. We're more the old mill type. Right, fellas? So you do the bushes. We'll check out the mill.
Incidentally, Vernon, like, if you find the guy and need some help, don't count on us.
So when Jonathan, Shaggy, and Scooby go down to the mill, as they decide that they're going to go there rather than search in the bushes where Vernon was searching, they send Vernon off to go over there while they go to search the mill. And they can't decide who wants to go inside, so they try to flip a coin. And Shaggy actually ends up, like, losing the coin at one point, and Jonathan gets mad, and Shaggy even apologizes, and he's like, I'm sorry, Jonathan, Mr. Winters. How about you both stay out here and I'll go inside? Which is so nice of Shaggy, despite how cowardly he is. He's nice enough to be like, you know what, I'll make it up to you. I'll just go in to make things easier on everyone. See, this is why I like Shaggy. He's such a nice guy. Of course, he doesn't really want to go in the front way, so Jonathan actually comes up with the idea to sneak in through the window and the back. And tells him to get on the water wheel to get up to that window. Shaggy doesn't think it could be done, but Jonathan's like, come on, would I lie to you? Like, just try it. But when Shaggy attempts to, he gets caught on the water wheel, which keeps dunking him, as well as Scooby when Scooby tries to rescue him, because Jonathan, says, Scooby, when he gets up, grab his legs. And when Scooby tries to grab his legs, he falls in the water with him, and so does Vernon at one point when Vernon tries to help him. After that whole accident was over, the red-haired man went back to, the farm. As he realized the coast was clear, they were all, doing their own... They were dealing with that whole shenanigans in the back, and he's covered in flour. Meanwhile, Maude, Fred, Daphne, and Velma are searching the wheat field for the other suspicious guy, and they split into pairs, with Fred and Maude searching one section of the wheat field, and Daphne and Velma searching another part of the wheat field. When Fred asks the girls to confirm their location, Daphne claims that they're by the Scarecrow. This confuses Fred and Maude, though, since the Scarecrow was just right next to them a minute ago, and it somehow moved. Fred realizes that the Scarecrow was a person in disguise and tells Daphne and Velma to grab him and say, that's our man, and the Scarecrow promptly bolts as soon as he is caught. While the girls are chasing him, he notices Fred and Maude coming the other way chasing him and is forced to flee in a different direction. He runs toward the farmyard and escapes. And this creates a lot of hijinks as we get a lot of chasing shenanigans. Fred, Maude, Daphne, and Velma chase the Scarecrow, thinking it's one of the suspicious guys. Shaggy, Scooby, Jonathan, and Vernon are chasing the other guy. Well, actually, Jonathan, Shaggy, and Scooby are trying to hide. Vernon's trying to chase the guy with the flower and get him. So it's a lot of funny shenanigans, but I enjoy this chase scene. It's a good, nice little compiled chase scene.
There he goes! We've got to catch him.
He's running toward the farmyard. Come on!
around the back. You go in the front. Things are liable to get a little fierce. I'll find a good hiding place for us.
Like, yeah.
What? Then follow me. Take it from an old, experienced coward. On a farm, the safest place to hide is the tool shed. Excuse me, sir. Yipe!
Double yipe!
Eventually, the two suspicious men are caught and revealed to be actually completely innocent because they knew nothing about the secret formula and they didn't even want it. They simply just wanted to ask Maude if they could rent her farmland to hold a rock music festival, something like Woodstock. But they never got the chance to because Vernon kept chasing them off every time. So they would try to ask her in a different way, try to sneak in and ask her, but Vernon would always chase them away. The men also revealed that they didn't have anything to do with the Scarecrow, as, they asked him, weren't you the one hiding in the wheat field? And the brown-haired guy explains that he was already hiding in the haystack when he got frightened by the Scarecrow jumping into it. With the Scarecrow confirmed to still be at large and Vernon now mysteriously missing, Maude lets the men spend the night in her house, telling them that they can discuss the details for the rock festival in the morning, while she and the rest of the gang continue their search for the Scarecrow. And they now suspect Vernon to be the culprit. Even Fred at one point is like, do you think Vernon could be the Scarecrow? And Jonathan and Maude are both like, it's unlikely. He was with me and Shaggy. And Shaggy's like, yeah, but not the whole time, Mr. Winters. Like, he could have been back and forth between both areas. Which he could have. But, the suspects are down to, have dwindled a little bit now that those two mysterious men are gone. Once the coast was clear, the Scarecrow appears and starts digging for the secret formula. Shaggy and Scooby end up running back to the farmyard, though, after they hear voices in the cornfield. It was really only Fred, but they didn't actually realize it, and they discover the Scarecrow digging in the farmyard. They got scared and fled away, which lured the rest of the gang back to the farmyard as they heard Shaggy's yells. And unfortunately for them, the Scarecrow got away before they arrived, and Shaggy and Scooby continue to try to attempt to avoid the Scarecrow, but their attempts proved fruitless, as they keep running into him anyways. Eventually, though, they, along with Jonathan, decide to hide in a stable. Worried that the Scarecrow may be in there as well, Jonathan decides to do some impressions of some police officers to flush him out, so the others can capture him. Which is actually pretty nice of Jonathan, because, he's taking some initiative and, is like, we can't do all the work, we gotta help them, so we can get this over with. It also gives him a chance to show off his impressionist, skills. It also gives Shaggy a chance to show off his impressionist skills as well. Although both Shaggy and Jonathan go a bit too far in certain cases. The Scarecrow caught on to their routine, though, and scares them away, and he even has a little smirk afterwards, and is happy about it when he scares them away, which is kind of funny, actually. The Scarecrow was next seen running into a grain silo after the whole gang is, running around, and Maude Fricker is, telling them, stop, 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 I can't tell who's who, and eventually she figures out who, where the Scarecrow is when she sees him run into the grain silo. So all but Shaggy and Scooby follow him into the grain silo, and they decide to hide in a chicken coop instead. Inside the coop, they discover the samples of the secret chicken feed formula buried underground in a metal box. But one of the chickens ate it all and grew so large that it actually destroys the coop, and the massive chicken proceeds to chase Shaggy and Scooby around the farm. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang are in the silo searching for the Scarecrow, and the Scarecrow tries to sneak up on Jonathan, but trips over a hammer and falls into the grain, and Jonathan accidentally hits the grain release switch, causing the grain along with the Scarecrow to pour out of the silo and land right on top of Shaggy, Scooby, and the giant chicken. The chicken bursts out of the grain pile and runs away with Scooby and the Scarecrow involuntarily riding it on top of it. And Maude says, they found the formula. Stop that chicken. You know, don't let it get away. And she tries to stop the chicken by grabbing one of its tail feathers. But it just drags her around until the feather breaks off. Which she even says, like, she's invented a new sport, chicken skiing. The gang realize they're not fast enough to catch this chicken. So they decide to get in the mystery machine and follow the giant chicken. Until it eventually shrinks back to its normal size due to the formula wearing off. And they head off the Scarecrow at a railroad crossing and capture him. And Maude and Jonathan actually ride in the two suspicious men's motorcycle and also chase it. And when it grows back to normal size, Scooby's holding on to the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow is holding on to this tiny chicken and still running, and it's fucking hilarious. I actually like the chicken chase scene because it's ridiculous, but also funny. It's also funny, you know, how Jonathan is, like, in the whole scene. Him and Maude have such great chemistry on that motorcycle, that they're pretty funny in that chase scene as well.
That chicken is almost as big as this chicken. Bye.
They found the formula. Don't let that pile of poultry get away. There's enough there to run my chicken stand for a year. Come on! Gotcha, you big fat fowl. Whee! By crickets, I've invented a new sport. Chicken skiing. Whoopee! Whoops!
Stop! That bird's too fast for us. We need wheels. To the mystery machine.
Hang on, Chickie. I'm gonna take this bike through the sound barrier. Jonathan, how'd you get in there?
Never mind that. How am I going to get out?
Just hang on. We're going after that big old bird. Watch out for this bump.
Why don't Scooby and the Scarecrow jump off? The chicken's running too fast. Chinkies, I think the chicken's getting smaller.
Bye, crickets. Jonathan, we're getting on it.
Fine. If we pass a dentist's office, will you let me off? I think my teeth are loose.
Fred, you can head him off at the crossing.
Will do. Get out, quick!
Uh-oh, better stop this machine. I guess this is the break. Jonathan, you're always in such a hurry.
Girls, you just caught the best act in show business.
So Maude proceeds to scold Vernon, since not only did he try to steal the formula, but he also left the chicken coop open. However, the Scarecrow replies with,
Vernon? How dare you mistake me for Vernon?
Fred unmasks the Scarecrow, and it turns out to be none other than Simon Shaky, Maude's banker. He says he wanted to steal the formula so he could start his own line of chicken restaurants. And I wonder, like, was this banker having a tough going? Like, did he not have good payment as a bank? I mean, I will say he's at least smart enough that he didn't steal from his own bank. And just decided, you know what, why steal from my own bank when I could just steal this, you know, chicken formula? Nobody's going to know. I'll be in the Scarecrow outfit. And once I get it, I can just make my own restaurants and make some money on the side. Vernon soon shows up with the sheriff and explains to Maude that things were just getting a little too crazy, and so he decided to go get the police. Maude notes that this is probably the smartest thing he's ever done, which I actually do agree with. You know, it explains his absence, but it is pretty smart that he'd be like, you know what, I can't find these guys, let me go find the police. The police arrest Simon and take him away. Even though the formula Maude's husband left technically works, Maude decides to scrap the idea of starting a line of chicken restaurants, since the effects of the formula are really only temporary, as we've noticed. However, she still chooses to go ahead with having a rock festival on her land, much to the delight of the two rock music businessmen, which is actually pretty smart because, honestly, a rock festival might even bring more money if you get a lot of good, good bands to play. And the episode ends with the sun rising, but the roosters aren't there to crow, so Scooby decides to crow himself. I'm going to give Season 1, Episode 4, the new Scooby Doo Movies, 3 stars out of 5. Since this is a 3 out of 5, we can start off with the positives or negatives. It really doesn't matter. I'll start off with the negatives of the episode, and we'll start with one of my major ones, which is some of the gang members, specifically Fred, Daphne, and Velma, I found pretty weak in this episode. They didn't serve, specifically Fred and Velma didn't serve their leadership or piecing together the mystery roles. Maude Fricker kind of took the leadership role, which was fine, but they didn't do any piecing together the mystery because it ties into another negative, which is revolved around the mystery itself, which I'll get onto later. But yeah, I just felt like Fred, Daphne, and Velma really served no purpose to the episode. They didn't really add anything. They didn't really do anything. They kind of just followed Maude Fricker's lead, and that was it. It was really a nothing episode for them. I just could not find anything that stood out or for them, but I also couldn't find any example where they served their normal functions. So I hate to say it, but unfortunately 3 of the gang members were pretty dull in this episode. They did nothing at all. They had good chase scenes, but that was it. A minor negative with the episode is that I found Simon Shaky to be kind of weak outside of costume. He just was the banker, kind of like came in and, had a little small conversation with Maude Fricker and then got, scurried out the door. But he didn't do any sort of, he didn't really build upon anything in the episode. He didn't tell the legend of the monster or, I guess you could say that, he looked like he was trying to be helpful to Maude and her cause. But he really wasn't, because the bank wasn't even going to loan the money to her, so... And then we have the next negative, which ties into something that kind of is the reason why Fred and Daphne and Velma don't work either. There was no mystery in this episode. Like, please, if somebody could tell me what it was, I would love to know. But I could not, for the life of me, figure out what was the mystery in this episode. I didn't see it. I mean, what did they do? They chased down 2 guys that they thought were after the chicken feed formula. Then they thought Vernon was the Scarecrow after they were caught. So it was really more based on where, they thought those guys were after the chicken feed formula, so they already knew they had a preconceived notion of what they thought they were doing. And they thought the same thing with Vernon. Like, they thought they thought because he disappeared, they immediately thought, oh, he must be the Scarecrow. He must be the one putting on the facade and getting the chicken feed formula. So there's really no mystery to be found here, because it's not like, what is the Scarecrow after? Usually a mystery is some sort of event or some type of, or we're trying to figure out why would the monster do this or why would it do that, or there's just no mystery here. Like, we know why people, we know why people are going after it. We already know the villain's motive. Like, we know he's going after the chicken feed formula, so we already know that. So there's no mystery to that either. So it just we lose all sense of mystery, because I, for one, don't see it. There's just no mystery here because we're not solving anything. They're just trying to chase down and get the formula first, or stop them from getting the formula and chase them off the farm. Not really anything else. They're not trying to, stop them for, some sort of mystery or trying to figure out what they're up to, because they already know what they're after and they already know what they're up to, or at least they have an idea, the preconceived notion of what they think they're after when it comes to the, the businessmen, the trespassers from earlier. Along with no mystery, we have no clues at all either. No clues to point towards the suspects at all. Nothing. I didn't see one clue pointing towards anything. they just kind of made assumptions. They're like, well, they must be after the chicken feed formula. That's the only reason. And then when Vernon disappears and they catch the two guys, they're like, well, Vernon must be the Scarecrow. It must be an act. Like, that must be it. That just might be what he's doing. They're just kind of making jumps in conclusion and not really, like, piecing anything together, trying to make a case of why they think Vernon may be the Scarecrow. I mean, they're right to think, you know, it's not implausible. I mean, yeah, Vernon disappears, so it's not out of stretch for them to think that he might be the Scarecrow, but it's just like, why don't you build a case first? Like, why don't you get some clues to, you know, show the case that? And that's because there's no mystery at all, so there's no clues either, so it just kind of sucks because there's nothing to solve here, there's nothing both on the suspect front and the mystery front, because there's nothing there to solve. It's just one giant... It's just more of like they're just trying to chase them away. They're just trying to get to the formula first. It's like a race to who can get to the formula first. Finally, I kind of found the atmosphere to be kind of dull and tensionless. There wasn't really much atmosphere at all in this episode. I didn't get any sort of spooky factor or creepiness or intimidation when the Scarecrow or any of the trespassers were around. There was no sense of danger or threat and scariness. I mean, the setting is not a bad one. It could have been scary, but the atmosphere didn't really lend itself to it. They just didn't really try well with it, or at least, like, the plot just didn't let, you know, because of the plot, the atmosphere just wasn't there. I don't know. But to me, the atmosphere was dull and tensionless, and I just didn't think there was any sort of tension, and it was just kind of boring. We were just kind of... I wasn't really fearing for the gang's safety, or Jonathan Winters, or Maude Frickard's safety. I just was, you know... just kind of watching, you know, just enjoying, you know, the hijinks and the shenanigans and them going, you know, where they were going to go next, but... I wasn't scared or anything, or felt any sort of sense of danger, you know, so that's just not a good thing, you know. The atmosphere just wasn't there. It was non-existent. That's all I got for negatives, though, so I think it's about time we get on to the positives of the episode. What really saves this episode for me? Well, I guess for starters, I actually do think Shaggy and Scooby are the only members of the gang that I actually thought were good. They weren't amazing, mind you. The humor was alright, not on par with their usual humor, but they were their usual cowardly selves, and they played well off the guest star, Jonathan Winters. I think they did a great job playing off of Jonathan Winters. They were their usual cowardly selves, and they had, like, small moments of humor, so it wasn't, you know, it wasn't their strongest in humor-wise in the episode, but, you know, they were their usual cowardly selves. They served their roles, and they played off the guest star well, so... I think out of the whole gang, they were the most, you know, they were the best, because they at least, you know, were given something to do. They had at least something there. Then we get on to the guest star, Jonathan Winters. And Jonathan Winters, for a guy that I don't really know much about, he was pretty great in this episode. In fact, I would say he's the best aspect of this episode. He really saves it from being a 2 or a 1. He is amazing in this episode. He had great chemistry with Shaggy and Scooby, easily. His cowardness along with Shaggy and Scooby was great. Specifically Shaggy. Like, he had a lot of his impressions and mimicry, you know, rivaled Shaggy's. It was a nice callback to how Shaggy used to do kind of impressions or mimicry in the original series. So he really played off of Shaggy well, and they worked so well together, especially even with their cowardice as well. And his character of Maude Frickard was also good because she showed another layer as well. You know, she got to be the leader, you know, and she helped forward the story. So she kind of got to be a different, you know, he got to play both sides. He got to do the leader aspect and let, you know, Maude Frickard be, you know, kind of drive forward the story. But he also got to be himself, where he could be cowardly, he could be funny, and he could do impressions and mimicry like Shaggy. And, you know, And even at certain points, he would say, we gotta help them. We gotta lure the Scarecrow out. We can't let them do all the work. We gotta get him out. So, I'll do some impressions so we can get him out there so we don't have to deal with him anymore and we could stop hiding. Easily, Jonathan Winters was great in this episode. Not just as himself, but as Maude Frickard. So, good job on the guest star front. A much-needed improvement from the last episode, I'll say that. He actually did something in this episode. His character helped forward the plot, and himself was pretty funny and played off and had great chemistry with some of the characters. Maude Frickard had a great chemistry with Fred, Daphne, and Velma. I'd say that was the only good thing about, with Fred, Daphne, and Velma. But yeah, he had great chemistry with the gang, and he helped forward the story. His character, Maude Frickard, helped forward the story. He had moments of helping forward the story, and he was funny. He shined bright in this episode. He was great. Then we have the villain, the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow isn't actually that bad. Either look is actually great. Take your pick. Like, the one with where you actually see his eyes, because they're inconsistent with it. There's points where you can see his eyes, which is pretty creepy. But there's also ones where the eyes are darkened, and that's pretty, creepy too. But I'll be honest, the Scarecrow is, he's decently, scary, threatening, and he works for the episode. But I wouldn't say he's one of the better villains in the episode. He works for this episode, but he doesn't really stand out. He's just fine. He could have been a lot better. It's probably because he's just as cowardly as Shaggy, Scooby, and Jonathan. He'll run into the haystack. He'll hide. He's not really... A villain's not really scary when he's doing the same thing as our main characters. I guess he's supposed to be coming off as more funny, which he does at some points. I wouldn't say he doesn't. He smiles at one point. He's satisfied when he scares the gang, but yeah, he works for the episode. Doesn't really stand out. He has some creepy moments when he's just standing there and you can see his eyes popping out, or he makes some, expressions. But I wouldn't say he's one of the scarier villains. He works, but he's not the scariest I've seen. I'm sure there will probably be more scary villains in the new Scooby Doo movies to come. He works for the episode, but not the scariest villain I've ever seen. And his motive was actually pretty good. I like the whole unique money motive. Simon Shaky could have easily just robbed his own bank, or could have, just done, been simple like that. But he chose to, go a more subtle approach and be like, you know what? Why don't I dress up as a scarecrow, sneak on Maude Frickard's farm, because I know she has a chicken feed formula hiding somewhere, and I can make money on the side, and I don't have to get in trouble with it as long as I don't get caught trespassing. It doesn't work, but he does get caught trespassing, which I guess is what he gets arrested for. That's the only thing I could think of. He didn't really do anything other than that, trespassing, but yeah, I found the money motive to be unique. It was good, trying to steal the chicken feed formula. We knew that was the motive. The motive was spilled right up front to us, so it wasn't a surprise what his motive was, but it was a good motive because it worked for the episode and because we knew what it was. I also think the amount of suspects of this episode were actually pretty good. You have the two trespassers, Vernon, and then you have Simon Shaky, the banker. So in the beginning, it's for them. At first you're led to believe that it's one of the two trespassers that are the Scarecrow, the guy in the wheat field. It seems like, but you find out that it was neither him nor the guy with the flower. So then they start to wonder if it's Vernon. And before I watched this episode, I thought, why would they ever think it was Vernon? But actually watching the episode, I do realize that the Scarecrow actually does have a figure. He's not too skinny. So it is possible, even though Vernon's big, it is possible that from the way he was designed, that it could have been Vernon, because it actually did have a shape that was decently big, but not too skinny. It was only pretty skinny once, it was revealed that it was Simon Shaky, but it was down to Simon Shaky or Vernon. But yeah, I mean, you got 4 suspects here. It does narrow down once the 2 trespassers are revealed not to be a part of anything. But still, even if you don't count them, there's still 2 suspects, and they're both decently good. You know, the episode makes you led to believe that it's supposed to be Vernon, which I think we all know by now that anytime the episode tries to lead you towards one suspect, that's usually not going to be the suspect, unless they pull a nowhere to hide, where they'll want to like pull the rug under you and say, "Nope, that we actually are sticking with with this guy." No, they stuck with their usual thing and did the other one, which was Simon Shaky, who we only met in one brief scene. It works, though. I think the amount of suspects were great, and it gave us enough to work with. Finally, I actually found the setting to be pretty unique and interesting in this episode. I actually loved the whole countryside farm setting look. It actually, like, even though the Creeper was probably the first to maybe try something like that, I don't think we ever had a farmhouse setting. Like, the Creeper was just a barn in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there was a house nearby, but I don't think that was connected to the farm. At least I'm not sure. I don't think the episode ever explicitly said that. But I think this is the first time we have like a true proper farmhouse setting where, you know, we got the farm and you know the main farmhouse and the farm. You know, we got the mill and the wheat field. So we got some nice variety in the setting because we're going into different places throughout the farm. And it's really good. It provides unique eye candy, you know, and gives us something new to look at and more environments for the gang to play with. So I really like the setting of this episode. I actually think it works, and it could have been utilized better had the atmosphere been not as dull and tensionless. But I guess maybe that's not a part of the... I guess that's not the fault of the setting, more so maybe just the writing of the episode. Overall, guys, I hate to say this, but I actually would not recommend this episode to fans and newcomers of the show. Don't get me wrong, it is certainly not as bad as people make it out to be. I think people are way, over dramatic over this episode being as bad as they make it out to be. It isn't downright awful. I wouldn't say that. It's certainly not the worst of the new Scooby Doo movies. In fact, I would argue it's much better than the Addams Family and the Three Stooges episodes, easily. Much better, more fun, even though it's missing a lot of elements that those episodes have. Those episodes fail pretty hard on some big elements too. But of course, this will probably drop down as we get, more episodes that we watch and review. But as of right now, I would say it's better than the Three Stooges and the Addams Family episode, but it is certainly not better than the Batman and Robin episode. Batman and Robin so far has still yet to be beaten. It's still the best one out of the 4. I personally just don't recommend it because it just doesn't represent what makes Scooby-Doo great. It doesn't have a mystery and clues. It's not what we're looking for. Fred, Daphne, and Velma are pretty weak. And, that's really, I think, the 2 major things. Because the atmosphere being dull and tensionless, that could have been a slight on the episode, but some episodes have that. And Simon Shaky being weak out of costume, that's a minor thing, but that's not a deal breaker. But Fred, Daphne, and Velma not being that their strong suit, and there being no mystery or clues here, yeah, that kind of takes away what we're looking for in a Scooby-Doo episode. So unless you're in the mindset of enjoying some fun, wacky shenanigans, because this has some good, chase scenes, some fun, wacky shenanigans. Unless if you're in the mood to just sit back and have some fun and enjoy Jonathan Winters. If you like Jonathan Winters, or if you just want more of a fun episode where you don't really have to solve any sort of mystery, you just get to see the gang kind of go around this farmhouse and, chase these people. Because I'll be honest, I like chase scenes. I like, chase scenes a lot. So there being a lot of chase scenes isn't really the issue. It's just that, unfortunately, they prioritize probably chase scenes over mystery and clues, and that, unfortunately, is a problem, because we can't take away mystery and clues. Those are important. We need that in an episode. So while I think it's a fun episode if you're in the right mindset, it's not a necessity and something you need to watch because it really doesn't represent what a typical great Scooby-Doo episode is. So I say you can skip this one. It's okay. It's not great, but it's not a necessity to watch. Only watch it if you're doing a marathon of the new Scooby Doo movies, marathon of the entire franchise, or if you're just in the mindset of having some fun, a fun episode with some wacky chase scenes and shenanigans, where you can just turn your brain off and be like, I don't want to solve any mystery. I just want to have some fun with the gang. And this episode can provide that, and it has the added bonus of Jonathan Winters, who will give you even more enjoyment if you're a fan of him. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give it a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. Do you like this episode? Do you think I'm being a little too harsh on it? You know, not giving it enough credit. Do you hate this episode? Are you one of those people? I'd be interested to hear why you consider this to be one of the worst episodes of the new Scooby Doo movies, or, don't really dislike it. Or are you somewhere in the middle like me, where you just think it's okay? It's not one of the worst, but it's not one of the best episodes either. I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content. I'll have plenty more Scooby Doo content on the way with Scooby Month. However, just like I said in the intro, if you guys want more Season 1 episode reviews of the new Scooby Doo movies, please comment down below and tell me if you want more Season 1 episode reviews of the new Scooby Doo movies going into May, and I will continue doing them. But yeah, if not, it'll be back during Scooby Month, and I'll be reviewing some more new Scooby Doo movies episodes then. But if you guys want more right now and want more going into May, like I said, comment down below, let me know, and I'll be glad to do more. You can also follow me on Facebook, where I have discussions about things we talk about on both my channels, and Twitch, where I hope to live stream in the future. In my next video, I will continue my playthrough of the 2018 Spider-Man video game with part 11 of my Let's Play, so I hope you guys will join me for that, and and continue with me on that. And I'll, script a little bit of Friday the 13th Part 5 and New Beginning in between, but that's all I'll be doing. And then I probably might have a Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir Season 1 Episode 7 review if you guys don't ask for more Season 1 episode reviews. However, if you guys do ask for more Season 1 episode reviews of the new Scooby Doo movies for next month, then next time I will continue with Season 1 Episode 5 of the new Scooby Doo movies, titled Guess Who's Not Coming to Dinner, guest starring Don Knotts. And from what I remember, I actually did like that episode, and I actually did enjoy it, and I had a good time with it. Hopefully my memory won't be skewered like with this episode. Hopefully maybe it will actually live up to what I remember. And I think a lot of other people actually liked Guess Who's Not Coming to Dinner, because the ghost in that episode has been referenced a lot in some Scooby-Doo media, so it's an episode that's regarded highly from what I remember by Scooby-Doo fans, and an episode that I enjoy as well, so it'll be interesting to see if my expectations hold up, if I'll actually enjoy that episode. So join me for that, whether that be, next month as my next review, or during Scooby Month, beginning of Scooby Month when that happens. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, peace out.
Scooby Doo, looking for you. Scooby Doo, where are you? All the stars are here, waiting for you. Couldn't have a show without you. Scooby Doo, Scooby Doo, Scooby